Hey, good morning, everybody. Welcome to another Cars and Coffee. And if you're a car guy that wants to learn more about your car and performance, you're in the right spot, because we're going to spend the next hour talking about things that make your car work better. This morning's topics, we're going to talk more about the front grip kit. I talked extensively about the rear grip kit for S197s, and somebody said, well, why don't you talk about the front grip kit? Well, we're going to do that today. Of course, we've got some quick hitters, some questions that come out of the Speed Therapy Society. If you're not a member of the Speed Therapy Society, I strongly recommend that you join. It's a great group of guys and girls where we share common things about our cars, track cars, and everything performance. So with that, I'm Kenny Brown, and for the next hour, I'm going to share some of my massive, extensive history of the professional motorsports and building great cars, track cars, race cars, and all of that. And I'm joined today by haven't been with us before, I'm joined by my trusty toolbox, which has been with me for over 40 years and been to just, I think, every major racetrack in North America, including Canada, Mosport, which I like Mosport, and won the 24 Hours of Canada there twice. We're going to have Ben O'Connor with us this morning, but we have some technical difficulties. So I'm kind of like scamper through that and move right along. Something I want to bring up that's pretty important is Mustangs on a Mission. And their virtual car show starts today at noon. And Dan and his wife, every summer, they go from car show to car show all around the country, and they raise close to $100,000 for prostate and breast cancer awareness. Really, really great people, dedicated to a great cause. Well, obviously this year there are no events, so he's doing a virtual car show, and it's pretty cool. Starting today at noon, I think it runs through tomorrow, Carrie. They have just about every half hour, they're going to have special guests, personalities from the industry experts. They asked me to be on. I'm on this afternoon at 3 o'clock. And if you go to mustangsonamission.org, you can see the lineup of people, and it's pretty spectacular. Plus, it's only $20, and it goes to a fabulous cause. It really help them out, seeing as they can't do their regular shows. And Carrie's coming up to tell me something.
Yeah. Well, and another note is that if you can't join live, I would still register for the $20, because if you register, you'll be able to receive the replays, so you can watch it at your convenience. And the industry experts are incredible.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of really cool people, even cooler than me. So, yeah, we were going to have a little mini masterclass today, and Ben O'Connor joined us last week in the Speed Therapy Academy. He did a full hour masterclass talking about restraints. He's from Impact, and they have fabulous restraints, helmets, and they got a really, really cost-effective Hans device. So if we can get him connected, we'll still bring him on. Otherwise, I'll just kind of do a little song and dance in between to fill time. Let's see there. We got some quick hitters. We're going to talk about the maximizing front grip. Yes. We are, third week now that we're simulcasting live on Facebook Live and YouTube Live.
And we're also on Impact site right now.
We're also on Impact site right now. So, wow, we're really kind of expanding our technology here. And if you're on, I got to read, Carrie has this stuff for me to read. If you're on YouTube, please, if you haven't subscribed yet, please hit the big red button underneath the video and the little bell, ding-a-ling-a-ling. If you want to subscribe, you get notifications on Cars and Coffee. And, of course, our Facebook people that have been with us for a while, we need those thumbs up. I mean, that really helps. And if you haven't been with us, Facebook kind of made a mistake. Well, there's supposed to be little wrenches that fly up, but they kind of melt and they turn into hearts. So just imagine that's a little wrench that kind of floats up. But thumbs and wrenches, we really like that. And then this art this one month. I've been featuring some of I got a really cool collection of automotive art, and I've been featuring something different every month. We started out this month with Dan Gurney, which was a pretty cool picture. It was actually a big photograph of Dan Gurney at the 1965 Le Mans, driving one of the Daytona coupes. And it was kind of cool because you can see him driving with his right hand and using his left hand, or vice versa, to shield the sun as he drove into the sunset, which is kind of one of my favorites. But seeing is this weekend actually is the Indy 500. In honor of that, we have Jimmy Clark, who won the Indy 565 and who was my boyhood hero. Jimmy Clark was Scottish. I'm Scottish. And he had a great influence on my whole career path. I had actually started at Watkins Glen. I was lucky enough to be at Watkins Glen the year he won the U.S. Grand Prix. And, the sound of those, the V8 Cosworths and the V16 Hondas, that just melted me. And, that kind of just cinched the rest of my life was going to be cars and motorsports. So I thought it'd be appropriate to have Jimmy Clark up here today. I said, move back so we can, my little toolbox can share some of the highlight. And somebody asked me, why don't I get another toolbox? And man, this thing's been with me a long time. And if that toolbox could talk, it's won a lot of races. It's won championships. It's part of my history. So that's why it kind of accompanies me. If it could talk, it has some great stories. So moving down the list. Okay, we got some quick hitters. And as you know, if from the Speed Therapy Society, the questions that come into the society are the core of the subject matter that I talk about on Saturday mornings. And also if you got questions, you'll send them in. And we're after we get through all the technical stuff, I'll try to answer as many questions as I can, if I can. I know a lot, don't know everything. So be sure to send your questions in, and say I need to kind of a master class. I'll back up a little bit. Ben did a master class this week for the Speed Therapy Academy. Academy is my full-on course on really getting into car performance. And this was a really big week for the guys in the academy. This was geometry week, suspension geometry, and they learned things that nobody else is going to know except for me and the people that are in the academy, and they're kind of like sworn to secrecy, because suspension geometry, you could say, is the secret sauce of why Kenny Brown Mustangs drive and handle so well, and why Kenny Brown suspensions work so well. I put more emphasis in suspension geometry than anybody else that I know, and I've been doing it for a very long time. I've got a geometry program that dates back to 95, 6 maybe, that I still use, and I've done thousands of simulations. And it's all about, suspension geometry is all about putting the most tire on the ground at all the time through all different driving events. So anyway, the guys really had a big treat this week, and I think they learned a lot. And I learned some things that I don't share, but they're kind of under a sort of a secrecy thing that's for their eyes only. Carrie's coming up with something. Oh no, I thought she had a sign. She does have a sign. Okay. In case you're just joining us, I forget to do this every week. Hold it up again so I can read the whole thing. Okay. In case you're just joining us, I'm Kenny Brown. This is Cars and Coffee, where I'll spend the hour sharing my extensive knowledge from professional motorsports and building great cars, and most importantly, answering your questions. That is where the subject matter for every week to week comes from, is answering your questions. If you're not a member of Speed Therapy Society, please join. It's a great group of people. It keeps growing all the time. And we also are expanding Instagram. We started Instagram recently. And
we may be streaming live to Instagram next week.
Whoa. We're really picking up our technology. Carrie said we're going to try to stream live on Instagram next week. But that's really starting to pick up on Instagram. So let's kind of move on to the quick hitters, the questions for the week. And there's some good ones. Mark White had this. This is an interesting question. He wants to know the difference between a torsion and a wave track differential. Okay, first, both a torsion and a wave track are torque sensing differentials. What I mean by that is most positive tractions that come from the factory have a series of clutches that kind of friction clutches that drive the positive traction, so you don't just get one wheel spinning. Well, they're pretty good for OE applications, but if you're really racing hard, they fail. I mean, that's all there is to it. A torque sensing has no clutches. It's a series of worm gears, and it works in such a way that the tire that has the most grip gets the most torque. The differential will shift torque to the tire with the most grip, which makes it an exceptional differential for motorsports. We've been using them in our IRS 99 to 04 Mustangs or Mustang Cobra IRS cars since '99. It's just absolute perfect application for that. We've been using them in our S197 track cars, and it's really good. The newest, actually, if you look at a Torsen, you want to use the newest one. I can't remember what it is, R2 or something like that. That has some better applications. People who've been with me a while know that I have asthma, and this is asthma season. So, okay, Wave Track. Wave Track is also a torque sensing differential. It works exactly the same except for one small feature difference. She does that every time. One difference, it has where the carrier sits, where all the gears are. Instead of being mounted solid, it has these little ramps, like a little wave that goes up and down, which is called Wave Track. Now, what we found when we started doing the S197s and we put our suspension in the back and we got rid of all the soft factory stuff and went to like really high quality spherical rod ends, we tightened up the rear end. And something I found in early on testing is that under really hard deceleration, hard acceleration, climb on the brakes, the back of the car did this wiggle thing. And I couldn't figure out what it was. I mean, we kept pulling the pits. We checked every nut and bolt in the back, checked everything, couldn't figure out where the wiggle was coming from. Finally, after a while, I figured out, okay, what's happening is the Torsen couldn't figure out which wheel the torque went to. So it was kind of shifting torque back and forth, which puts a little wiggle in the car. It's kind of unnerving at the beginning, but once you understand what it does, it's okay. Figure that out. But with a Wave Track, that doesn't happen because the carrier kind of rolls up on these little waves, and so the back end doesn't wiggle. The other thing we found with the Wave Track is that now the Mustang has a C-lock differential, which means the axles come in, you put a C-lock on it, they pull back, the pin goes in and holds it in place, but you always get movement. And if you want to run a big brake package with a C-lock, you have a problem because big brakes are hard mounted, calipers are hard mounted, and with the axle kind of moving in and out, you go around a couple corners, and it's called pad knockback. It knocks the pads back in the caliper, and you go to hit the brakes right to the floor. You got to kind of pump them up frantically. Just imagine that. If you go to hit the brakes, and those brakes start pumping like crazy to get to stop. With the Wave Track, they didn't. The play on the axles was very minimal. So we didn't have to do anything. Normally, we'll have to change the outside, change it like a 9-inch bearing on the outside so that the axle doesn't move. To put a big brake on the back. With the Wave Track, we didn't have to. Now, here's the downside to Wave Track. There's two downsides. Number one, once you get the C-clips in, it's almost impossible to get them out. But that's not the worst part. The worst part is they don't offer for Mustangs anymore. I think it's because of the C-clip issue. It's a fabulous rear end. I wish they still made it for Mustangs, but they don't. So I mean, it looks like Torsen's your go-to, and a Torsen with the I forget. You can probably look it up as maybe an R2 or something, but the very latest version of Torsen is what you want. So there's a difference between a Torsen and a Wave Track. Both of them are what you want for torque sensing differentials. There's another one in there. There's Eaton that it's kind of like the same principle. It's worm gears, torque sensing. We actually Strange Engineering builds a lot of custom stuff for us. They custom build our SN95 struts and shocks to my specifications. But they also have put together. They do a custom 9-inch rear end for S197 Mustangs. That's a bolt-in. It's specifically set up for road racing, and we use the Eaton torque sensing differential in that. So I mean, there's 3 different options for torque sensing. All of them are good. If you use factory clutch type, at some point it's going to fail. It's just it's inevitable, especially if you're running sticky tires. And she's coming up again.
Yeah, I just want to make a note that We are, for the Impact viewers that are watching from Impact Facebook page, we are waiting for Ben. We have a little bit of technical difficulties, but we expect him to be on a little bit later. So hold on, and you'll
hold on to your hats. Okay, so that's the first question, and you're going to like this one. Mike wanted to know, can I run factory wheel liners with a KB K-member on a 2004 GT? Okay, the reason he's asking this is on our SN95 front K members. The K member was introduced in 2001 at SEMA, and it brought in AGS 3.0. AGS is Advanced Geometry Suspension Systems. And we, certainly we sell parts, but more importantly, all my suspensions are a system. Everything's engineered to work together as a system to improve grip and performance. In the SN95s, what we do is we move the ball joint forward. I can't remember now. It's been so long since maybe an inch, which adds an inch to the wheelbase, changes the front to rear bias by I think 0.5 percentage point. But more importantly, adds a ton of caster. And caster is really important in improves camber. Well, first of all, I tell people when you're aligning your Mustang, put as much caster in as it'll take. Like for the SN95s, our caster plus plates, we don't have any caster adjustment, just camber adjustment, because I found out if we eliminate the caster adjustment feature and just put maximum caster in, we could pick up at least a 0.5 degree more caster, sometimes more. And you just can't get enough caster in a Mustang. Because caster, it helps straight line stability. It helps the camber gain. It actually, believe it or not, has an impact on anti-dive and helps turn-in. So it does all these good things. Anyway, getting back to the liners, when we move everything forward an inch, depending on what size tires you're running, sometimes you want to know if you run the liners, because the answer is it may, depending on your tires, it may make a rub through the liners. And if you're looking at the driver's side straight on, it's going to be at 11 o'clock. Well, here's the good news. When a rotating wheel generates a lot of pressure, if you're looking at it like from the driver's side at 11 o'clock. That's why you see on like prototypes, they have all these vents across the top. That's to relieve the pressure from the tires create. So when you open that little hole, that actually relieves pressure inside the little fender thing. It's best if you had some way at the back, if you open up the back a little bit, just if the pressure builds up, to let it go over the top of the wheel arch and out the bottom. So, I mean, the answer is yes, but it's not a bad thing. The other thing, if you're putting one of our SN95K members into a free, I think it's 91, 92, there's a little bit of interference with tire on the fenders. The choice is to use like a 92, 93 fender, or what we've had people do is it's in the very front of the fender. The tire just hit the very, very bottom of the fender in the front. They'll actually kind of just peel that, bend it back a little bit, and then put the molding for a 93 on there, and it works great. So yeah, I mean, you can use it. It may rub through, but that's not the worst thing in the world. As long as you provide some way for if you let air out of the front, but let it go over the top, and make a slit or something at the bottom, so it'll come right out the bottom. So it's kind of a roundabout question. Now, Michael had some interest. Michael Musgrave saw a picture, I think it was maybe on Facebook or something. We're looking at my driving, my hand position on my driving. And he had a question. He said the rule I use is rest my wrist on top of the steering wheel, slightly bent elbow, gives me 180 degree arm crossability. Tend to use a quarter hand 15-minute position for as many turns as possible. It would allow me to catch an understeer or oversteer situation. Any feedback I would appreciate. Well, first of all, if you got understeer and oversteer, you really need to look at that first. I mean, if you're at a driving event, you can't be dealing with oversteer, understeer. Understeer, you're slowing down, going around a corner. Oversteer, you're doomed for disaster. So if you got understeer, oversteer, I'd address them first. Obviously the best thing to do is bolt on one of my suspension systems, and that'll take care of it. Secondly, in the picture, you saw where my hands were. Well, that's by design. If you're track driving, I do not recommend you put your wrist on the top. you should always have both hands on the steering wheel gripping at all times. And you have to have complete control of the car. And the reason I have my hands there is because I can drive all day with my hands at that position. If you here's a little exercise for you to do. And everybody watches, the Grand Prix guys kind of like driving like this. Well, laid back and driving like that. Well, all you have to do is just take your arms out and just move them like that a little bit. Okay, you move them like that, and you can feel the muscles. Now you take your arms, and just move like this. It takes almost no effort. Okay, and that's why I grip at probably 4 o'clock and 8 o'clock, and because of that, I have complete control, and I can turn into any corner. Oh, I got to get higher up. I can turn into any corner. It's really easy, so easy. I can drive all day like that. And that's what you should be doing. I mean, the other thing is I sit up pretty high. I sit up pretty straight so that, the steering wheel is kind of like in my lap, and I can just do this. I mean, I can, by doing that method of driving, I can drive all day. I have complete control of the car. I never get tired. If you're resting your hand, you're not in control. You have to have both hands on the steering wheel. If you're driving up here like that, you're going to wear your shoulders out. I mean, if you just do that, you can just feel in your shoulders the energy that you're using. Where down here, you're not using any energy. So that's my recommendation. Of course, everybody has their own way of driving, and you don't have to do what I do. I'm just telling you what works the best for me. And I've got probably hundreds of thousands of miles of track driving, and I figure out the best way to do it. He also talked about using his palm on shifting, and that's another thing. I mean, you want to have complete control of the car. You don't want to use your palm on the shifter. Grab the shifter hand. You want your hand on it. You want firm grab, just like you want a firm grasp on the steering wheel. You want a firm grasp on that shifter, because you want to be in control of the car. And to be in control of the car, you have to have grip on the steering wheel, grip on the shifter. In an S197 and 550 cars, I know the shifters can be challenging at best sometimes, especially if you're going really fast and want to shift. You have problems. Two recommendations. The first is just throw the factory shifter away. The reason you have problem shifting is that the way they've engineered the car is the part of the shifter sits on the transmission, okay, and the other part where the handle is mounts to the tunnel of the car. So you've got the engine and the car, and when you get your foot into it, the engine's going to torque. And the engine's going to torque, the transmission's moving, the shifter on the car is not. So you maybe want to shift when the transmission's going like that, and it's not going to go. We change all the shifters in all the cars I build, and the type we use actually mounts the entire shifter to the transmission, and shortens up the shift, and they're extremely positive, man. It's just like chunk, chunk, chunk. So, changing shifter is the first thing. And if you're really dedicated track person and want to make an upgrade in the transmission, the Magnum XL is the only thing to use. We've had people, we've installed a lot of them in our cars, and the people that we install them for just say the things just shift like butter. It's a 6-speed. There's two different ones. If you do the Magnum, you want to be sure you got 297 first in the 0.8 fifth gear. The other one is more of an OE type that has a double overdrive. But the road race style, the colors ratio has a 0.8 fifth gear, so that when you shift from fourth to fifth, the car doesn't go. I remember all we had was the T5 back in the Fox cars, and you go like crazy, like Road America down the straightaway, which are really hammered on fourth gear, hitting up the red line, and you shift into fifth gear, the car goes. It just slows down because there's not enough gear to pull it. Well, that's why 0.8 is such an important fifth gear to have. So when you need it, it's there. So grip the steering wheel, grip the shifter, get a better shifter. We have them if you need one. And if you need to talk about it, something else that I do that for people that have questions that are a little more complicated than I can just answer in a few minutes on Cars and Coffee, you can sign up for one of my 15-minute consults, complimentary consults. I think there should be a way to do that.
Yeah, I'll add a link to it.
Okay, Carol, add a link that you can sign up for a 15-minute consult. and there's a calendar. On a couple of days a week, I just carve some time out to answer people's questions and help them with solutions on things they're looking to do. So we kind of get through the Herver Ben yet.
Yeah, we're getting connected.
Okay, yeah, okay. We got Ben's coming on board from Impact. Really, actually, they're a local company right here in Indianapolis, and they build most of their stuff here. They have great harnesses, and like I say, they've got probably one of the most cost-effective Hans devices that you can find. Yeah, we actually have some of their stuff, belts, shoes, gloves. If you've been with them before, you know, even if you're novice or intermediate, 2 safety things you need from my point of view is you need a good set of gloves. Remember I said you need holding the wheel? If you got a good set of gloves, you're going to be able to hold that wheel the whole time and your hands are not going to get worn out. Ben, you're there.
Hey, how are you doing?
I was just talking about gloves and also driving shoes. I call them my dancing shoes because you need a shoe that's got a really thin sole so you can feel the pedals and stuff. But Ben's here to share. Ben actually did a full hour in a masterclass in our Speech Therapy Academy last week, and it was a lot of really interesting information. Every time he talks, I learn something. So he's going to share just a couple more tips today on restraints. Is that right? I should have talked to you and not talking to her.
Yeah. We just wanted to cover a couple really, just go over it briefly here. A couple different things. Some of the things that we talked about during the master class, we'll review real quick here. So a couple of things I want to talk about real quick is just the different types of restraints, different type of latch mechanisms. And I'm at home today, so I apologize. I don't have a lot of props to really show people, so I'll have to describe it. But there's your basic type of latch. Everybody's familiar with the OEM, standard clicker type latch mechanism where you just click it in and you press a button and it releases, right? 3 points, so they refer that to restraint, where it comes over the shoulder and across the lap. The other type of latch used primarily in competition, there are 2 different types. One is what they call a latch and link, which is basically a lever with a hook on it that goes through an eyelet side of the other half of the lap and hooks into place. Very simple design, been around for, I don't know, probably the 30s or 40s. They used it first in the military applications, and then somebody along the way, some smart person figured out that, hey, this could probably work pretty good for motorsports, and adopted for use in motorsports. Not a lot can go wrong with them. They can be a little cumbersome to use because you have to feed the tang part of the one half of the lap through the different straps, the anti-sub strap, the 2 shoulders, before you latch it onto the other half of the lap. So sometimes that can get a little complicated, a little cumbersome at first until you get used to doing it, then becomes second nature. The other type used in motorsports and gaining popularity quite a bit, although yet a little bit more expensive, is what they call a cam lock. And that's somewhat similar to like an OEM style in that you just click the tangs into the latching mechanism. So you take the 2 shoulders, click them in, maybe a lap, maybe the anti-sub. Sometimes it's pinned permanently to a different, maybe one lap or the other, or maybe the anti-sub. But anyways, you click them all into position. And then to release them, you just simply turn the knob or a lever and everything just lets go. The advantage of that is regardless of positioning, load, whatever, when you turn that lever or knob, it releases, period. So single point of release, which is a requirement for SFI in most forms of motorsports. You just want a really simple, getting egress is the most important part, right? It's not so important getting in the vehicle from a safety standpoint, it's getting out of the vehicle. So those gained a lot of popularity there, although the latch and links work really well that way too. But because you've got different mechanisms and loops and things like that, sometimes we've heard rare cases maybe they can bind up if you're upside down and hanging or something. The cam lock absolutely eliminates that, and then just the convenience of it. So those are the two most popular types of latch mechanisms used in motorsports, and really the only ones I'm familiar with that are really used, other than maybe some OEM type latches in some forms of motorsports. The other thing I want to talk about briefly here is we'll talk about the importance of the webbing size and the changes that have happened there over, say, the last 10 years or so. There's been a really strong movement towards going towards a 2-inch restraint, not just on the shoulders to accommodate the FHRs, which have been doing for quite a while, but now across the laps as well. And there's a very sound biomechanical reasoning for that. And that is because we want to keep, if you take, it's about, let's back up a little bit and say that the most important function or the most important aspect of your restraints, other than them being mounted correctly, which is the most important part, is getting them tight. I know Kenny's a huge proponent of tight, and he's absolutely right. Particularly in the laps, you want to get them as absolutely as tight as you can stand them. They will loosen up as you go during the day, particularly if it's a longer race, as you lose weight and dehydrate a little bit and just settle into the seat, things like that. But you want to get them as tight as possible. So the tradition has been a 3-inch web restraint. Again, because it probably goes back to those days when someone took it out of a military application. That's what they used in those days for the strength, right? The textiles weren't as good, so they used a 3-inch webbing to get that strength. Nowadays, it's not an issue. You can get all the strength you need out of a 2-inch webbing. But anyways, with a 3-inch restraint, if you imagine your hip pocket, right, and the webbing goes across your hip pocket. If you got 3 inches, right, it's got to contort and fold and to get down in that pocket. So it's difficult to get the belts as tight as they really need to be. With 2 inch, if you just pull a finger in and you take, and I know some of you at home are probably doing this underneath the desk there. You set it in the pocket, it's already down in there and it's not folding and contorted, right? So you can get the belts a lot tighter, up to 2 inches tighter than with a 3-inch restraint. So that's real important. Why is it important? Again, we want the hips or that portion of the body to be as tight as possible because it's the strongest part of the body. You can withstand more loads than any other part of the body. So in an event, that's going to help you stay contained, and containment's always real important. We want to stay contained in the vehicle, in the seat. We don't want to be flinging around and stuff moving around. Minimum movement, because it also arrests energy too. Objects in motion stay in motion. So if we stay in the seat in an event, if the front of the vehicle stops, right, you're going to continue moving forward. Now, if you can keep moving out of the seat because the restraints are loose, you're going to get that hit hard against the restraint when it finally pulls tension. And now they do give a little bit, but you're still gonna hit it pretty hard. If they're really tight, you're gonna move, kind of with the vehicle let it absorb all that energy, right? You're not taking that motion before you bottom out, I guess, as you would say, on the restraint. So that's really important. The other thing too is that it keeps you down in the seat as well. Again, as long as the restraints are mounted properly, it's going to keep you down in the seat. And that's important because it helps prevent shoulder, collarbone injuries, things like that in an event. The shoulders really are to prevent you from moving forward. They're not meant to keep you down in the seat. And a lot of people make that mistake, which will segue right into the next thing, the importance of mounting the restraints properly. On a lap restraint, you want to keep those about 45 from your body. Ideally is where those want to be. And then the shoulders, you want to be, the mounting point, you want to be about 5 degrees up to 5 degrees down. Some people will say, proponents maybe up to 10 degrees. We like to keep it closer to straight, maybe 5 down, 5 up. That depends on the type of FHR you're using. Sometimes it's better to keep them down a little bit. Sometimes better to keep them up. But again, that's to prevent that forward energy. If they're down too far, and you'll see people do this, they'll adapt 5-point restraints in a car that doesn't have a roll cage. What happens if they're mounted to the floor in a forward event, since you've got the webbings coming up over your shoulder and back down, as you move forward, it wants to pull down on your body, it wants to compress your spine, and you can get spinal injuries that way in a forward event, even though you're restrained and all that. So that's real important. The mounting is really important because you do want to run the shoulders tight as well. Again, to prevent that forward motion. but you don't want to have them mounted too low and do that, because then you can create a compounded situation. So the other thing we'll talk about real briefly is how they're typically used. Or let's go over, I'm going to move into FHRs just a little bit, the frontal head restraints. And everybody's familiar with the traditional Hans style of device, the inventor of the device itself, still to this day, highly renowned in the industry. It is the wing that was the forefront of all the technology that you see nowadays. Now, there are certain variations of that design, but they all, for the most part, operate on the same basic principle. There are, with that, those two different types of devices you'll see. You'll see ones that have that sit loose on your body, that the restraints go over, and that's what holds them in position. And then you'll see devices that strap on your body. The differences between the two really are, there's some effectiveness. A lot of people argue in the community that the ones that don't strap to your body are actually work better than the ones that do, and I'll explain why that is in a moment. But mobility, when you have with the devices that sit on your body, in an event, the body moves forward underneath the device. The device actually stays back with the restraints. So you run longer tethers, which gives you full mobility. You can move, great movement and mobility to look around and check things. But during an event, because your body's still, no matter how tight you get them, your body's going to slide underneath those restraints, underneath the device. That takes the tension up, and then that prevents that forward motion that can create in excessive basilar skull fractures, what we're trying to prevent. So that's the one style. The other style, the ones that strap on your body, or use variation straps and things like that. They're effective, but because they don't stay back, the tethers have to be pretty short to prevent that injury, that basilar skull injury. So they just tend to be short, and you just don't have the motion and movement that you do, and they're just can be uncomfortable for a lot of people having all those straps on them. So I think those are the three basic things, Kenny, I wanted to touch base on, and I think we'll open it up to questions if we're ready to do that. Unless you have anything you want me to talk about or anything to add.
Well, I can tell you, when I started racing, all there were these great, big, thick 3-inch belts with a latch. And I can't tell you how many times I was late for the grid. I'm frantically trying to get these damn things clipped together to get strapped in. So yeah, I mean, 2 inches is just, I think they're just absolutely marvelous. They're just so much easier to deal with. And something I tell people, you absolutely cannot get your belts too tight. It's impossible. It's absolutely impossible. And I have a couple of tricks that help people get them even tighter than tight. Is what I'll do is if it's a power seat, I'll move the seat back a little bit from my driving position. If it's kind of like on a slider, I'll put that back a notch, and I have somebody help me get the belts absolutely as tight as possible. And then if like on Ruby, I had kind of a slider. I'd have somebody pick the slider up and push real hard. So it makes the belts even tighter. If it's got electric seat, that's easy. Just hit the button, move yourself up, get them extra tight. So that's it. And you just cannot get belts too tight. It's absolutely impossible. Yeah. Another little trick I do for getting the shoulder. Sometimes trying to pull your shoulder straps down like that is kind of awkward. What I do is I'll actually take and I'll use my arm. I'll pull down on hold the strap. Where am I? Here I am. I'll hold the strap, and then I'll put my arm on the strap itself and push it down. So I get leverage to get the shoulder straps even tighter. It's a lot easier than trying to pull them down like this. If you just, I can't even find myself here. Here we go. If you just kind of hold on to the belt and then just push on the belt itself, it's like using the leverage. So yeah, I mean, restraints are super, super important. Tight.
Yeah, we've even in motorsports, they've and you'll find this in a lot in off-road and also dirt oval track. They're pretty popular there, and to some degree a little bit in road racing as well, is where they have a ratchet mechanism where you actually install like a quarter drive ratchet to tighten up the lap belts. That's how important that is. And That's the lengths that people go to get them, just like you do, as tight as you can, and it may even to the point of pain. But again, as you know, once you get out there and start moving around a little bit, no matter how tight you get them, they still, right, not loose, but they loosen up from wherever you tighten them up.
I can tell you absolutely, inevitably, every time I'll get the bike belts as tight as I can in pit lane, and by the time I'm or in the paddock, and by the time I'm going to pit lane, I'm pulling down those shoulder belts.
Yeah,
because they just, even from from paddock to pit lane, I'll be tightening them babies up, and sometimes if it's a hot day, I'll try to. It's really hard going down the straightaway, but even give them a little extra tug if I need to, because again, you lose, you start sweating and you sort of like get smaller, so you need to tighten up the belts. So
Yeah.
Terry, do we have some questions?
Yeah, I have a couple of questions for Ben. Carl Wirtz asked, does body size, shape make any difference on 2 or 3 inch belts?
Well, it's, you know what, only in that 2 inches even more important, right? If you're smaller, for that same reason, to really keep the belts down in that hip pocket. One of the things we really don't want is for the webbing to come up over the top of what they call the iliac crest. You want to keep it in the portion of the hip bone they call the ilium, which is that curvature part. Because if it gets up over the top of that in an event, it could creep back and then get in your stomach area and cause internal injuries. It's also way more comfortable for smaller humans to use the 2 inch as well. But no matter how large you are as well, the 2 inch is still better for all the same reasons, because your bone structure doesn't typically change. It's just a large person, but with additional weight. So we're still trying to keep that belt down in the hip pocket and low. It's the other part of this too. We want to keep it as low as we can. So no, 2 inch always. It's mandated in NASCAR, so people know. Don't even show up. You can't even show up to any of the 3 series of NASCAR with a 3 inch belt. They won't even let you run them. And they've largely adopted them in NHRA Top Fuel. Like all the DSR team, all those guys are running 2 inch, and a lot of the other guys are too. And Antron can attest to the 2 inch himself. He was in a really gnarly crash about 4 or 5 years ago. People remember that. It was really bad. And he walked away from the event, and he came back to us and said, man, what a difference that made, from the stuff I'd been doing in the past. So no, 2 inch.
Hey, do you know Antron's my cousin?
Yeah.
Antron Brown.
Yeah.
Yeah, every time we see each other, it's kind of like a joke.
He's such a great guy.
Yeah.
He's awesome.
Okay, I have a couple more questions for you. Let's see. Can you, what are the main things to consider when purchasing helmets, gloves, and shoes? I guess that's a big one.
Oh, let's say it again.
Brad would like to know, what are the main things to consider when purchasing helmets, gloves, and shoes?
Yeah, we could talk probably another hour on that alone. I think that the biggest thing really is fitment is pretty important. The specifications that you need, right? You need to check with the series that you're running under, or the sanctioning body or series or club, whatever that may be, and find out what the requirements are. And don't necessarily race right to the minimum, right? A lot of people will tend to, maybe it's a budget thing or comfort or whatever, tend to run the minimum, but it's always okay to buy more safety. That's all right. Most sanctioned bodies that require suits will require an SFI 5, which is a minimum, typically 2 layers. For helmets, they'll either require, most of the time, there's very few sanctions that won't accept a Snell rated helmet. And real quick, Snell, every 5 years, they change the requirements that manufacturers have to meet for the helmets, with the idea of being each iteration of helmet being incrementally better. So the helmet, built 5 years ago, or is in theory, the one built now is a little bit better. Now, sometimes the changes are so small that manufacturers don't really even have to make any changes, so it really doesn't make that much of a difference. But sometimes they're pretty profound. So one of the things they did 5 years ago, a pretty big bump in the standards and requirements. They added a hot test to the standards, right? So So it made it a little bit tougher. So it was a big change there. Whereas this year, it's really not that much of a difference. So that's a requirement there. In suits, comfort is a big thing. You really have to think about regionally where you're running, when you're going to run, if you have air conditioning or not. If you're in a car that doesn't have air conditioning, you're running in the desert Southwest, you're running in the deserts of Baja. You want a really light, breathable suit, right? Something that's comfortable. You're going to be in it all day long. Whereas maybe if you're in pit or crew duty, you can get away with maybe something a little bit hotter, or just track days you're going to be in it, maybe a few hours a year or something, then yeah, you could probably get away with something maybe a little bit thicker material, a little less expensive. Shoes is such a personal thing, and gloves. You really almost have to try them on, really. In Kenny, the glove thing is huge. We have athletes that we work with all the time that constantly will try different gloves and move around. Trying different gloves to find one that's really comfortable. Some of the things to look for that make a comfortable glove are whether the stitching is internally, externally. Typically, an externally stitched glove is more comfortable than internal stitch because you don't have everything bunched up on the inside of the glove. It's aimed outward, so there's less bunching up on the fingers. The other thing is a glove that's pre-curved, like our Alpha glove, which is curved before it's sewn. Right, or the pattern's done such a way, again, so as you wrap it around the steering wheel, it's not bunching up on the inside of the glove, making it more comfortable. And then whether you have leather in both fingers and palms, or maybe a silicone, which is thinner, again, more tactile feel, a better interface between driver and steering wheel. Shoes, again, real personal. There's a lot of times, there's a balance. If you're going to be in them all day, say you work on your own vehicle, you want to walk around the pits, get in the car without changing shoes and drive. Shoes a little bit thicker sole are a little bit better way to go than, say, a pure racing shoe, which is a very, very thin sole, usually very stiff sole without any real support. It can be very uncomfortable to wear those all day. So those would be some of the things that I would look for.
Yeah, my shoes I've had like forever that worn out. I think they might be the Sparcos, and your Sparco is part of your company now, and they've got a super thin sole. I mean, I love them. I can feel everything with my feet. But I can't walk very far on the paddock because even the little pebbles, I can feel when I'm walking across. Yeah. So I have to change my shoes right away when I get out of the car. And then the gloves I've had, God, I don't know how long I've had them. I came across them. I think, I don't know, I may have got them from Boris a long time ago. They're No Fear gloves. And I just love them. I mean, they're just curved perfectly. And yeah, again, it gets down that you talk about that personal thing, and I've got two things I've had since forever. Unfortunately, my shoes, I have no choice. I'm going to have to replace them pretty soon. I mean, they're getting beyond thin right now. So yeah, I mean, it's and we actually featured some driving shoes, Cars and Coffee, a while back that were like the perfect starter shoe for people because it has a little thick. It's a good driving shoe with a little thicker sole. So that you don't have to change your shoes. You just wear them through the paddock. Right. They're impact. What was the name of those?
The Axis. Yeah, Axis shoe.
I think we may have them on our website.
Yep.
Yeah, and that's like the perfect starter shoe because you don't have to change your shoes as soon as you get out of the car like I do. I mean, I kind of like tiptoe over the trailer and get my shoes changed right away.
Yeah, we've sold quite a few of the Axis.
So, okay.
A couple of more quick questions. Chris Melatu, how good are those 4-point harness restraints?
Okay. How good are those 4-point harness restraints? It depends on what kind he's thinking about. He might be talking about like the rally type, which are a single click, or they could be talking about like a competition 4-point. But typically competitions don't come in 4 points. They're either 5, 6, or 7 points.
He's a series track driver. So
okay, track driver. He might be talking about like it's a 4-point rally style that has like an OE click. I mean, they're 2-inch. Again, you follow the same principles. Keep them low. It's a good starter alternative. Certainly, if you go into advanced, if you're in the advanced class, it's something you might want to think about moving up to, something what more Ben's talking about. But for novice and intermediate, they're perfectly fine. We actually offer some of those. So I'm guessing that's what he's talking about. Yeah, I mean, it's for novice and intermediate, they're perfect. It's like a single clip.
He says Schroet.
Okay, the Schroets, the Schroets actually are kind of a unique belt. They have something on the shoulder, I can't remember, that under impact that releases and kind of twists the body, and Ben could probably answer what that does better than I can.
Yeah, no, I'm vaguely familiar with the technology, but yeah, it's to prevent the body. I think that's their 3-point, right? So it's try to keep things lined up while you're in a frontal event. It's kind of an interesting concept. It's designed to release energy gradually, but most restraints do that. It's a compromise, that particular technology, because again, you want to stay back, you don't want to move forward. But because of the mounting configuration, how they're done, they're kind of trying to keep the body also in alignment in a frontal event as well. None of that stuff's a substitute for proper 5-point setup. But yeah, the 4 points would be a better alternative than something like that for sure. But again, even more critical in a 4-point to keep the laps super, 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 super tight, because we're losing the benefit of the anti-sub, which isn't just anti-submarine, it's also to help keep the laps down low in the body in a frontal event as well, right? So when we lose that, and again, we could talk for 15 minutes just on anti-subs, then even more so important to keep the shoulders, or keep the laps super tight, and maybe run the shoulders maybe not quite so tight, because the problem there is as you tighten, you pull the laps up. And again, there is that risk that we can get that into the stomach area. Again, very dangerous. You want to keep the laps as low as possible.
Okay. Yeah, but for people starting out, I mean, the 4-point is much better than just the standard.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Yeah, this is like you said, you just want to make sure the laps are really, really tight when you use those.
That's, I mean, the big tip of the 4 points for novice, intermediate, even some advanced are perfect. You have to just keep the belts very low and extremely tight.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's anything is better than a factory seatbelt.
Absolutely.
You have to make yourself part of the seat, which means if you're part of the seat, you're part of the car, and if you're part of the car, you have more control. And you focus on driving, you'll get tired.
Okay, we have one last question for you, Ben. Okay, it's from Wendy. How about this? My seat feels loose compared to last year. Is there a good way to tighten up the seat to your body so you don't move as much? I have a Sparco QRT Evo in my car.
I don't know. That's kind of an interesting question. I assume because the foam is maybe settling or wearing out. No, again, it's really, and it's not real thick. So really, again, it comes back to just making sure everything's really tight. I would say that the biggest thing in that scenario there. So,
yeah, I've got a trick for that. When I've driven other people's cars, that the seats are a little bit wider. Typically, the looseness is because I'm kind of a little guy in the hips. I'll take and fold up some towels and stuff them down between me and the seat, so it's really tight. So it kind of just takes up some space. And I've also, in some seats, had to fold up some towels and sit on them so I can see over the dash. So because I drive a lot of different people's cars, so that my trick is, good old-fashioned towels. The other thing is just some foam, some really dense foam.
Right.
You can stuff down anything that just takes up the space and makes it tighter.
Yeah. Yeah, no, absolutely.
Okay, well, Ben, we appreciate you showing up today and sharing some of the important things about restraints, which I wholeheartedly endorse restraints and talk about them constantly. But you have to be secure in the car. So we thank you for joining us today, and I guess with that, we'll get back to our regularly scheduled program.
All right. Good deal. I really appreciate it. Thanks for the time. All right. Bye.
Now if I know how to do that. Oh, there we go. I'm back.
I removed him.
Okay.
So he can't even sit and watch.
Okay. Do we have any other questions this morning?
Not yet.
Okay. We don't have any other questions as yet. And we're kind of like, I don't have quite enough time to talk about the full front grip kit that I do. But I can just give you some highlights. My suspension systems are I do things a little different than everybody else. You can go to like any website and choose your control arms from 20 different manufacturers. And on our website, you don't have that option. And there's a specific reason for that. Other people sell parts, and some people that sell parts actually take the parts they sell, put them on cars and call them special. Our whole program is 180 degrees opposite. The cars come first. I build the cars first. And our whole parts program flowed out of the fact that if there wasn't something in the market that I liked and had confidence in that I needed to get a specific outcome, then I created it. That's how our whole parts program came into existence, is all the parts that we have in our program are the parts I use in building my cars. And anybody that's ever driven one of my cars or talked to anybody that's ever driven one of my cars, I mean, they're, they have just nothing but absolutely fabulous things to say, because, I focus, I get back to like the geometry and making sure the car just works. In fact, our suspension system, my suspension system only has three components, let's say: rear grip kit, front grip kit, springs and shocks. And the reason that we started moving to just selling the whole system a number of years back, because it's you can still buy the individual parts, but it's the system that makes the difference. On the rear grip kit, every single individual component is engineered to have a specific improvement on suspension geometry and to work with everything else. That's why I say it's a system. And the rear grip kit is probably one of the biggest products we've got. Anybody that's driven S197 Mustang, I mean, they can be kind of challenging. The back end wants to get away from you. The guys that are in our Speed Therapy Academy went through geometry this week. I kind of showed them why that happens, and through the geometry changes how I fix it. But everything in the back, and it's a pretty easy kit. Just bolt it on and go. The front grip kit, well, the rear grip kit, I should say, is the lower control arms, which are double adjustable, super high quality rod ends, and they are made parallel instead of splayed like the factory. We got traction brackets, which I was actually the first to come out axle traction brackets back in the 92 something, or 92, something like that. The upper controller module, it's just not a factory replacement. The actual upper control arm is longer, and the mounting point has been changed. So we, in fact, the instant center, which in turn impacts the anti-squat, and then the roll center. We bring the roll center down with the roll center relocation kit. We move the panic bar down to the bottom differential, and the back works so well, we just throw the rear sway bar away. It's just not needed, because we fixed all the roll issues with geometry. So, I mean, that's the rear grip kit, and it's pretty simple. It's not very expensive, easy to install. The front grip kit is it kind of moves up a notch on installation, but it's only basically three components to that. We've got the K-member, the control arms, and then the bump steer tie rod ends. We sell the K-member and control arms together is simply because they're engineered to work together as a unit. We've got, the anodive is built into both the K-member and the control arm. We use extended ball joints to bring the roll center up in the front. And then we have when we lowered car, you often need to bring the bump steer back into range, and bump steer is going around a corner. If the bump steer is off, when you hit a bump, wheel is going to start steering on you the wrong way. And what we did is this is an example. This is like a factory tie rod end, and we actually had these, went to a manufacturer to have these made. This is a long shank, which helps the bump steer. Ford Racing used to make these a long time ago for the FR500C cars, but they went out of production, so we went to one of our manufacturers, and they put them in production. So, I mean, it's pretty basic. And then springs and shocks, we've got a number of different springs and shock packages. Most of them, I'll say 90% of our spring and shock packages are all coilovers, because I like to adjust spring rate for my customers. And you buy a coilover package from me, you're going to get the rates. I'm going to pick the spring rate you need. We've got some good value priced options, and our premium shocks are JRZs, which are absolutely fabulous. And then we just now started adding another option, a super value option with Coney yellows, and then one of our suppliers has a decent spring package that'll replace OE. It gets the spring rate up around over 300, which you really need. Most aftermarket off the shelf springs only go to 200. Factories like 170. Our touring is 350. Street performance 400. Intermediate track 500, 550. And advanced track 650. And of course, World Challenge on Pirelli slicks is 850 to 1,000. So I use spring rates different than anybody else in the industry, and there's a reason for that. I mean, doing it longer. So that's kind of like a brief overview of the entire suspension system and its systems. And I tell people if they want to do it in phases, rear grip kit first, springs, coilover package, and then front grip kit. And on the SN95s, we still support and have suspension systems for the 99, 04 Mustang IRS Cobras. I think we're the only people in the aftermarket that really not only focus but specialize in the IRS. We've got more components. Again, we can do a complete geometry package for the IRS in the back. We convert the coilovers. Nobody else does for the IRS what I do, just simply because I don't think anybody understands the IRS like I do, because we've been doing it since '99. And when the IRS came out in '99, I mean, Mustang market just went crazy because they were all drag racers. Didn't know what to do with it. Well, back in the '70s, all I did was, work on formula cars, open wheel cars, and everything had IRS suspension. Even like the Triumphs, Triumphs back then, the Spitfires and the TRs all had independent rear suspension. So when the Mustang came out, pretty easy for me. I just understood how it worked. So that's why we kind of keep specializing in it. S550 cars, I'm not doing much on geometry because it's a pretty darn good package to start with. We've got some great spring and shock packages for it, and you can make that go pretty well. So I'm rambling on here, but the thing that I keep preaching about, if you've never been with us before, is before you do anything, forget about the engine, forget about the supercharger. That's only going to get you into trouble too soon. What you really want to focus on is what I call the performance platform. And that's chassis, suspension, wheels, tires, brakes. You get those 5 things taken care of, and it's going to be unbelievable how much more performance the car has. My 2012 Ruby, my track car, it's a GT with cold air kit and exhaust, but a full suspension and a great brake package. And the car was exceptionally fast. Even the tracks like Road America, where it's a big horsepower track, between 3 and 5 down a short straightaway. I mean, I'd fly past GT 500s, because I carried a whole bunch of speed mid corner and off the corner, and while they're spinning their wheels. So I mean, chassis, suspension, wheel, tires, brakes, and like I said earlier, if you have questions or looking for some solutions or which direction to go, please sign up for one of my 15-minute consults. Again, there should be a calendar. I think it was Mondays and Wednesdays. I carve some time out, Carrie.
Yeah, Mondays 4 to 6, and Tuesdays 10 to 12. Okay,
Tuesdays. Monday 4 to 6 and Tuesdays 10 to 12 is when I want to do some 15-minute consults. I guess we don't have any more. If you don't have any questions.
Yeah, I don't think there's any questions.
No questions. Everybody must be happy.
How did everybody like Ben? Do they want us to do that more often?
Yeah. What do you guys think about having Ben as a special guest? Carrie is proposing that we do a little change in format to Cars and Coffee. And if I get back to that page, I can tell you what it is. Starting in September, we're going to move to 10 o'clock on Saturday mornings. Some people were saying that, the 11 o'clock, this starts getting into the family day. So we're going to go to 10 o'clock. And remember that all the Cars and Coffees are recorded, and you can get them in the Speed Therapy Society on Facebook, in our private Facebook group, or on Kenny Brown TV, YouTube, Kenny Brown TV. All the previous recorded, and we have some people that watch in evenings. For that group of people, we call it Whiskey, Cars, and Kenny. So if you can't make it, you're not going to miss it. You can always catch up. So we're going to start 10 o'clock starting September 1st. And we're going to try it once a month, see if we can bring in a special guest from the industry that I know, like Ben, talk about specific subjects.
And driver coaching,
things like that. And then also what we're going to do is once a month, we're going to do an encore presentation. That's just, to give give me a Saturday off, so to speak. So that's kind of some of the changes that are coming up. And again, the content that I talk about is driven from questions in the Speed Therapy Society. So if you've got questions, if you want to be on one of those little quick hitters, certainly send your questions in, and that's how I shape the content of what I talk about, because I can talk about hours about all kinds of things, but I want to talk about what you want to learn about, and that's what I'm here for, to try to teach you, help you share with you some of my experiences and knowledge from over the years.
So again, if the people that are remaining, if you can comment whether you would like us to continue to do mini masterclasses with experts from the industry, if you can comment yes or no, we greatly appreciate it.
And also, if you found the value from them, again, also if you find value for what we talk about and share on Saturday mornings, somebody else, some other group that could also gain value from it, please share with them. I think there's some share button somewhere that you can kind of click on and something happens.
Okay.
That's kind of like, I know cars, I know cars really, really well. It's just, the Facebook clicky button things that I'm not a little vague on.
Here's a comment from Caden. I lost it. He's, why have I been missing this all my life? This is great info. I could listen to it all day. Well, Caden, you can go to YouTube, Kenny Brown TV YouTube channel.
Yeah, because this is week 25? This is week 25. So we have 25 episodes out there, and I cover a vast array of information, and I think it's really good information. We've had incredibly fantastic positive feedback, and we get that comment a lot. That people say that this is great information. Now, I can tell you quite frankly, what I talk about, you can't get that information anywhere else. I'll almost guarantee it. The information I share this is it. And I'm speaking from experience, not from reading books or talking to the guy in the pit next to me. Remember, in talking to the people in the paddock, they typically know just enough to think they know what they're talking about, but moreover, they don't know enough to know that they're wrong. So just kind of keep that in mind.
Okay, I think just you're going to be on Mustangs for Mission.
Yeah, Mustangs for Mission this afternoon, 3:00. Wonderful cause. Please support them. The $20 is not a lot of money. You get to see a whole bunch of interesting people from the industry, and you get to support awareness for prostate and breast cancer. I strongly recommend that you do that. And we've been supporting Dan. The two D's. Yeah. Dan. We've been supporting Dan for quite a while. So look forward to seeing you at 3:00 this afternoon. Otherwise, we will see you again next Saturday morning. Send your questions in, because I want to know what you want to learn about. So listen, have a good weekend. Thanks for coming. I really like you guys. I love you guys. See you next week.